Okay, so we left off last week. We were discussing Hanukkah, different type of oils that one is allowed to use. And I just noticed when I was reviewing for the class that I left off of a piece. So I'm just going to go back a second, with your permission. Last week, if you remember, we mentioned about the difference when you're washing white clothes or colored clothing. So that same rabbi that mentioned that thing about he went to the store, he went to the cleaner, he told him why you're charging the same price. Mm-hmm. So he also said a statement as follows. He says, whenever you're going to give, and I think it might be practical also these days, whenever you're going to give a, a bag of clothing to the laundromat, you're dropping off your clothing. So you should weigh it before you give it to them. And then after you get it back, you should weigh it again. Now, because if the weight is different, then it could be he messed up your clothing. So either he put too hot water was too hot. Sorry, not weigh it. Sorry, take that back. Not weigh it. Measure the clothing. Mm-hmm. Let's say you give a suit. So measure top to bottom, right to left, length, side, right to left. And when you get it back, measure it again. If you see that it's longer, it means he messed up your clothing. While he was cleaning it, he was stretching it too much. So he stretched it out. And if it's too small, it could be he used too hot water and he shrunk your clothing. So very practical advice is to measure before you go. Okay, let's go back. So one of the sayings that we said yesterday was saying the name last week, was a saying from Rabbi Nassan, the son of Manyumi, that he said the name of Rabbi Tanchum. And he said something in regards to Hanukkah. A lot of times in the Gemara, when we mention a saying from a certain rabbi, so since we're already mentioning him, so we'll say another statement from the same rabbi. So here comes another statement from this Rabbi Tanchum. And the saying is apparently no connection to Hanukkah. We'll talk about it in a moment. He says, in the story when the brothers sold Joseph as a slave. So as the story goes, they were angry and unhappy with Joseph, with his dreams, and he used to tattletale on them. They were jealous of him. So they were planning to kill him. They see him coming, and they discuss amongst each other, let's go kill him. And then comes Reuven, which is the eldest brother, and he says, let's not kill him. Let's put him in a pit. Instead of killing him, we'll put him in a pit.
We'll pretend we did.
We'll pretend. No, Reuven actually was planning on coming that night later to save him. So Reuven suggests that, and they said, okay. They threw him into the pit. And the verse that describes this says, V'haboir reik, the pit was empty, ein boi mayim, there was no water in it. So those three words, there were no water in it, seemingly is extra. Because when you say V'haboir reik, the pit was empty, that already implies that there was no water.
Right? No, but you have to specify what it was empty of.
Exactly. You don't have to specify.
No?
You could just say the pit was empty.
Oh.
So the rabbis teach us that those words, there was no water in it, are actually coming to hint out to us that there was no water, but there was something else. What was there? Nechashim v'akravim. There were snakes and scorpions there. Now, Reuven obviously didn't know that there were snakes and scorpions there, because if he did know, at least according to some commentaries, if he would have known, then he wouldn't have suggested that they should throw him in. Other commentaries have different opinions. They say they knew that there were snakes and scorpions, and they actually wanted specifically to throw him in because they said the snakes and scorpions will only bite him if God wants. So if God wants him to die, he'll die. That's some commentaries say that. Anyways, that's not the discussion for now. Here we're just saying that there were snakes and scorpions. The Rebbe Nasicha, the Lubavitcher Rebbe has Nasicha, describes the connection between this saying and Hanukkah, because it comes in the middle of the Hanukkah story. And he says, what does it mean, Maim? Maim refers to Torah. Ein Maim, says, Ein Maim el Torah. Torah is compared to water, just like water keeps on flowing. So the Torah flows down, and that's God's energy into the way he transmits us his energy. Torah is referred to water many times. Ein by mind means there's no Torah. What happens when a person is empty from Torah? And he doesn't have mind, his mind is empty from Torah. Then, if your mind is empty from Torah, Nechashim, snakes and scorpions come in, which means evil, bad, inappropriate thoughts fill our minds, because unless we're busy filling our mind with positive things, so then negative things are going to take the place. There always has to be something going on in the brain. And the connection to Hanukkah is because when we're learning Torah, we have to remember who gave us the Torah. God gave us the Torah. And we're not learning Torah just because it's a nice history book, or because it's interesting laws, or because it's very old and antique, or makes you smart. Those are all external reasons. We're learning Torah because this is God's Torah, and it's spiritual, and this is holy. And this Hanukkah, the Greeks wanted to remove that holiness. Syrian Greeks, thank you, Yaakov. The Syrian Greeks wanted to remove the holiness aspect from the Torah. They were okay learning Torah as a book, but they wanted to remove the holiness of it. Okay, let's move on. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Asi, which said in the name of Rav. Also, lahartzei smois keneged ner Chanukah. One is not allowed to count money in front or next to the light of the candles of the Chanukah candles. We say in the Alanisim, which is the prayer that we say after we light the candles, we say, and these candles also lishtamish bahen. We're not allowed to use these candles for our own benefit. But in the Gemara and the Talmud is actually an argument. Some people say you could use it. Some people say you can only do mitzvahs, only do good deeds. Counting money, says Rabbi Asi, in the name of Rav, that's not allowed because counting money is not important, unless you're counting Hanukkah geld. But regular counting of money is not a mitzvah, and therefore you can't do it in front of the candles. So Rav says that when he said this, or Rabbi Yehuda said, when I repeated this saying from Rav in front of Shmuel, Rav and Shmuel used to argue all the time. Shmuel holds that you're allowed to use the candles for whatever you want. If you want to read a book next to the Hanukkah candles, you're allowed to. We actually, just before we move on, the halacha is these days, Shulchan Aruch rules, according to Jewish law, that we're not allowed to use the candles for our own benefit. That's why we add a ninth candle. That ninth candle, called a shamish, that extra candle is actually in case somebody is going to end up using the light. So then we say he's not getting from those; he's getting from the shamish. Welcome, Charlie. I thought you were coming in person. Okay. Okay. So Shmuel holds you're allowed to use the candles. So Shmuel, when he heard that Rav said you're not allowed to count money next to the candles, he's like, why not? What holiness is there in the actual light that's coming out from the candle? You're not using the candle. If I would take the candle to light something else, okay, tell me you're not allowed to. Use the candle for something for to warm up your pizza, okay, that you can do. Pizza, tacos, pizza. But the light that's coming out from the room, when you utilize that not light, you're not doing anything wrong. So what's wrong? So he says, is there any holiness in the candle? I mean, actual candles, yes, but in the light that's coming out. So Rav Yosef, he wasn't happy with this comparison. He says, you can't compare. There's no light, and of course there's holiness. I'll give you an example. I'll give you something else where you see that you're not allowed to utilize, even though you might say there's no holiness. It says about when you slaughter an animal, either a bird or a wild kosher wild. I don't know if the right word is wild. How do you call it? Deer. Chaya.
Wild animal.
Not wild. Charlie, how do you say a chaya in English?
Untamed.
Like a deer. What? I mean, only wild animals that I know. Yeah, it's called wild.
It's definitely
okay. So if you slaughter a deer or any other kosher wild animal, not a domestic animal, not a behemoth, or a bird, any type of bird or chicken, there's a mitzvah called covering the blood. It's called kisui hadam, covering the blood. You sprinkle the blood that's coming from your slaughter, you put it onto some earth, and then you make a blessing and you cover the blood. We do it by kaparas, right? You've seen it?
Always.
Right. So it's called Kisi Adam. So it says over there regarding this mitzvah, covering the blood, it says you have to cover the blood with your hand. You're not allowed to like
Use any tools.
use your foot or use something to cover it. Why can't you use your foot? Especially if it's on the floor. You might want to just kick some earth on it. The reason is because we don't want mitzvahs to be like something like the
Yeah.
bizuyas. Bizuyas means like degraded or
Look down.
disgraceful. Is that right?
What's the mitzvah?
The mitzvah is to cover the blood.
Why? What's the?
I don't even know.
It's
Could
a
be it's a chuk. Yeah, it could be there's one of those mitzvahs don't have a reason. So, but you're not supposed to use your foot to show that it's like not something you're disgraceful. So here also, when you're utilizing the light of the candles, there's no holiness in the candle, yes, but by you utilizing it for something else, it's not respectful for the candles. So that's the reason why you can't use the candle. Now Shmuel will answer. Shmuel, which disagrees with this, he would say, can't compare. When you're kicking the earth on the blood, you're actually touching you're using your foot for this disrespectful way, but counting money is not the same thing. That's why we have arguments. Each one has their opinions. Okay, let's move on. Massive Rab Sheshes, since we're speaking about Hanukkah, Hanukkah is connected to the menorah. In the Beis Hamikdash, there was a menorah. Now, the setup of how it looked in the Beis Hamikdash, for those that are not familiar, there was in the Holy Temple, there's a big walls, different sections, and then you come to the outer altar, and then behind the outer altar is the main sanctuary, the main building. It's actually one of the only buildings in the actual. There's a few on the side, but the main building of the Beis Hamikdash. You go up steps, you come in. There's a lobby called the Ulam. Then you go more in. You have something called the Heichel. The Heichel is like the main room, and in the Mishkan it was called the Kodesh, the holies. And then in that room you have three main things. You have the menorah, you have the small altar where they burn the ketores, the spices, and then you have the showbread where they have the bread, the weekly bread. Then behind that there's a pareches, there's a curtain. And then behind the curtain was the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodeshim. That's where the ark was. That's the layout of the Beis Hamikdash. So the pareches, the curtain that's hanging there, is called pareches in the verse. It's called pareches ha'edus, the pareches of a testimony. Okay? And it's the verse tells you, next to the pareches, which is a testimony, over there you shall light the menorah. That's what the verse tells us. What is the verse telling us? The verse is telling us the purpose of the menorah. The menorah is not here to give us light. God doesn't need a candelabra, a special menorah, in order to have light. The Jews went for 40 years in the desert, and God lit the way for them. So God doesn't need our light. So why do we have the menorah? It's just to be a testimony. To be a testimony for the Jewish people that the Shekhinah, God's glory, is resting amongst the Jews. This is like a animated visual. Teachers, they have to have visuals. Yeah. This is the visual that we have, that God's glory here. And what was the testimony? Where do you see God's glory on a daily basis? You're able to see it on a daily basis. They would fill up all the 7 branches. There were 7 branches on the menorah. In Hanukkah, we have 8. In the temple, there were 7. So they would fill up each lamp, each top of each where the fire is, called the lamp. There's 7 lamps. They fill up the same amount of oil for each lamp. And the Ner Ma'aravi, the western lamp, which is a dispute which one that's referring to, either the middle one or second to the left, depending on which direction the menorah was facing. There's 2 opinions whether the menorah was this way or that way. So the Ner Ma'aravi, the western lamp, would stay lit the whole day, 24 hours. Even though all the other candles would go out in the morning, and the amount of oil that was there was enough to last till the morning. The sages estimated a half of a log. That's a certain measurement. That's in the winter months. That's when the nights are the longest. So they estimated how much oil do you need to last till the next morning. And they came up with a measurement, a half a log, and that's what they filled up all the lamps.
Ooh.
The Western one lasted till the next night. Now it's a miracle. Now we celebrate Hanukkah because the oil lasted for 8 days. Really, in essence, there was a miracle every single day in the Beis Hamikdash that the oil lasted the whole night. So, and this is a testimony to God's presence in the world. And that's why the Parachas, which is hanging right there as a backdrop of this menorah, the backdrop is the Parachas, and it's called the Parachas, the curtain of the testimony. We're moving on. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, now this is I'll tell you what a piece in the Gemara, and then I'll tell you what it says here. The Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, you're allowed to use all types of oils for the menorah, Hanukkah menorah, and all types of wicks. For Shabbos we said you can't use certain ones, but for Hanukkah you can use whichever one you want. But the best is to use olive oil. Olive oil uses the best. Olive oil burns the nicest. Some other rabbi said he heard that cottonseed oil you should use. Cottonseed oil lasts the longest. It burns. I'm not a maven in oils, but that's what the Gemara says. Cottonseed oil lasts longer. But then when he heard that what Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, the best is to use olive oil, he switched and he said we're moving to olive oil, and he agreed. And he said olive oil is much clearer, beautiful, pure as lice. And that till today we all try. The best is to light olive oil for Hanukkah. Speaking about Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi about olive oil, comes now another statement from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the same rabbi, in connection with olive oil. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Kol hashemonim yofim lidyoy. All oils are okay to be used for ink, in the creation of ink. Shemen zayis min hamufcha. Olive oil is the best oil to use when you're making ink. Which ink are we talking about? We're talking about ink that to write a Sefer Torah, to write tefillin, to write a mezuzah, we're supposed to use black ink. How do you get black ink? So the method that was used to make black ink was a two-step process. I don't know if it's done till today. These days we probably have some type of chemicals or some type of other things that they use. But the way they used to use it back then is they would take a glass jar. They would burn olive oil, maybe like a little lamp, cover the oil that's burning with a glass jar. Yaakov, what happens when you cover a candle with a glass jar?
The dust, like it's black.
It becomes black. You ever see that?
Yeah.
You ever see the Hanukkah? If you ever had the oils in Hanukkah, the glass jars, which are only around, turn black. If it would be covering, it would be completely black, right? You just need a little bit of air, so it shouldn't extinguish. You need some oxygen, but the glass turns black, right? So the glass will turn completely black. That black, you could scrape it off. It's called soot.
Did they use that?
So,
No, you take that soot. Sut? You say sut? Right. You take that sut, scrape it off the glass till you have a collection of it. Then that's called la'ashen. The next step is legabel. You take some more olive oil, and maybe you have to wait overnight or something. I remember exactly. No. You take that black soot, and you mix it with some olive oil, and then you knead it. You make it into a dough. Okay. Then you let it to dry. I don't know if you put it in the oven or not. You wait till it dries, and then you crush it up, and you mix it into your ink, and it turns black. Okay, Yaakov, you want to become a social? So he's saying the olive oil is the best oil to use to make this type of oil. Okay, now we're moving on to the blessing of the Hanukkah candles. The blessed my mevarich. What blessing do we make? Asher kiddushan baruch, blessed you are God, Elokeinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushan b'mitzvaysav, you are sanctified with your commandments. V'tzivanu, you commanded us to light the ner Hanukkah. Question is, Echan Tzivanu, where does God command us to light the Hanukkah candles? Hanukkah was instituted by the sages, the rabbis, in the middle of the second temple. And where did God say in the Torah to light candles? You say V'tzivanu, you commanded us. Where did God command us? So Rabbi Avia says the verse in Deuteronomy says, Lo yisasser, you cannot veer off, you cannot go off in the ways that the rabbis tell you. So the rabbis tell you something, you have to listen. And God tells you have to listen to the rabbis. And Rabbi says, another verse says, Sha'al avicha v'yagetcha zekenecha v'emer lach. You have to ask your father, he will tell you, and the elders, and they will teach you. Which we learn out from here, you have to listen to the rabbis and listen to your elders. And if they tell you about mitzvah of Hanukkah candles, who's the Rebbe? Who's the rabbis?
Huh?
Who are the rabbis?
People who have smicha.
Right. And if the rabbis instituted the commandment of lighting the candles, then we could say Vitzivanu. Okay, next. Tanya. Omer Rabbi Shimon says, Bishvil arba dvarim amra Torah laniach peah b'soif sodeu. This is Ein Yaakov is very interesting because you could go from one topic to another topic, jump around, all over the place. Because in the Gemara, there's a flow, and then different random things get pulled in at different locations. Here, we're just collecting those random things. So now we're moving from Hanukkah, we're moving to Peah. What's Peah? There's a commandment. If someone has a field that is growing wheat, barley, and he has a field, wheat field, right? So there's a mitzvah, a couple of things that he has to, a couple of gifts from his field need to go to the poor people. A couple of different mitzvahs that need to go to a poor person. One of them is called leket, which means when you're collecting the wheat to cut it, every time you grab a bundle and you cut, a couple of pieces of wheat are going to fall to the ground, naturally. All those pieces that fall, you have to leave. You only get to hold the bundles, the big bushes. All those little pieces that fall, you leave on the floor. After you're done, the poor people come in and they collect those. That's number one. Second one is called shikha. If you leave by mistake, this is a mitzvah you can only do by mistake. If you by mistake left the bundle back in the field, you're not allowed to go back to get it. Leave it for the poor people. And the third one is called peah, which is when you're reaping, cutting off all the wheat from your field, you have to leave the corner of your field for the poor people. There's no exact measurement, how big. A corner, you leave an edge for the poor people. You have to leave it for the poor people. So these are the three mitzvahs. There's actually more. Every few years, you also have to give a tenth of your leftovers, whatever. We're not going to get into that now. So over here, we're going to say just 4 reasons why the Torah commanded us to leave peah, the edge of the field, and not just say, the Torah could have just said, give a huge bundle to the poor people, or set aside when you're cutting all the wheat, give 50 bundles or give 20% to the poor people. But the rabbis didn't say, the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says, leave the edge of your field. What benefit is there by saying leave the edge of your field and not some other type of tzedakah or some other type of charity? So we're going to give it now 4 reasons. Number 1, mipnei gezel aniyim, from stealing from the poor people. The field owner might cheat the poor people. If you say you could give at any time during the process, you could give away to the poor people, so someone is going to tell a poor guy, like a friend of his or someone that he knows, and he's going to say, listen, at 12 o'clock, that's when I'm going to designate the part of my field for the poor. You'll come and you grab it. So at 12 o'clock, no other poor people are going to be there. So he's basically giving away just to specific. It's what's it called in these days? They're very into leveling the playing field. New York is very into making sure that everybody is equality, and making sure everybody gets contractors. You can't just pick the best contractor. You have to give everybody a turn. So if your guy does not do a good job, too bad. You got to take him, because you have to give everyone a chance. That's how it works in New York.
Diversion.
Whatever. It's just crazy. We were doing something from the government. You have to get 3 bids from 3 different contractors, and you have to take the cheapest one.
Cheapest one.
Yeah, you're not let it go according to what's better.
Amazing. Huh?
Whatever. That's the
What
society.
happens if you just don't do that?
So if you're getting government funds, you have to.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah. It's whatever. And so they want the rabbis wanted to wanted all poor people to be able to get equally. So you have to have a set time. If you're leaving by the end, then the guys know, okay, we have time. You're gonna be finished. We'll come back we'll come back tomorrow when you're by the end. The second reason is those poor people. If you wouldn't have a set time when to do it, and you're just gonna middle of nowhere give a surprise announcement. So we're worried that a whole bunch of poor people are going to hang around your courtyard doing nothing the whole day and wait for the announcement that they could come in. We don't want poor people sitting doing nothing, being unproductive on their phones, wasting time. We want them to be busy. So this way they can have a schedule. This guy is going to finish his field at 2:00. Okay, we're going to come back. The Schnars, they know exactly which shul to go to at which time, which minion is holding where. The poor people are busy, so they have to know exactly where to go when. So that's why it has to be you leave the edge of your field.
That's why we locked the door.
That's why that was for you.
Is it still practicing?
What Paya?
Leave something. Yeah. Like,
For sure not in Chutz La'aretz. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I don't know. Number 3. Number 3 is Mipnei Achshad. People are not going to know, passerbys are not going to know if you left the edge of your field or not. It's not easy to see. If you leave the edge of your field, then everyone could see. This is what you did. But if you're going to do it randomly while you're cutting, no one's going to know. And people might suspect you that you never did it. And it's also important, it's a lesson. You're not supposed to do something that might enable someone else to suspect you. You have to come out, it says V'yisim Nikiyim. You have to come out clean. And the last one is that we want it to be last. We want what you're leaving in your field should be last. Should be the last thing that you're doing. Why? Because there are people that will cheat. And they won't give it. And therefore, by saying you're leaving it for the last, this way, like everyone knows, and then it's gonna be obvious that you actually gave it, and no one will be able to cheat. People are gonna be waiting, and you won't be able to tell them. Cheaters won't be able to say, "Oh, I already gave it." People that are interested in cheating, they're not gonna be able to say, "I already gave it in the beginning." This way, no one can cheat. And when the poor guy when the group of schnars, the group of schnars, they come to your field by the end of when you're finishing your harvest, and they're about to charge, which that's what it was, but they used to, as soon as the owners leave, all the schnars, they come in and they start picking from the floor and they run to the corner and they grab. This was their livelihood. This was the way. If you read the story of Rus, you know the story of Rus, famous story. So she was being modest.
She was
modest. She wasn't rushing. She was just taking whatever was left, and that's what the Boaz saw in her. Okay.
And then he died that night.
Wasn't that night? Next
It was not.
Amar Avuna. Okay, this next piece is actually an interesting piece. It's like a whole bunch of blessings. If you do good things, you get blessings. So it's a list of what the blessings are. Rav Huna says, Haragel B'ner Chanukah. Someone that's, when we say Haragel, it means someone that's going to be very into it, someone that's going to be careful with it. With the mitzvah of Chanukah, he's going to merit to have Banim Talmid Chachamim. He will have children that will be scholars. Hazar b'mezuzah, someone that's careful with the mitzvah of mezuzah, he's going to be zoiche, he's going to merit ledirana, to have a good house, nice apartment. Hazar b'tzitzis, someone that's careful with the mitzvah of tzitzis, zoiche letalisna, he will have good clothing. Hazar b'kiddush hayoim, someone that's careful with making kiddush on Shabbos. Zoiche mamale gar beyain, he's going to be rich and be able to have many barrels of wine. There was a fellow, his name was Rabbi Abin, and Rav Huna used to hang around his house to see what's going on over there. and he noticed Chazad Averagel B'Shraga Tuva. Rabbi Avin was very into lighting candles, especially Shabbos candles and Hanukkah candles. The whole house was always lit up with fire, candles. So when Rav Huna saw this, he said, "Terei Gavri Ravreve Nafki Mecha." Because he's being careful with the mitzvah of candles and Shabbos and candles of Hanukkah, he's going to merit to have two great lights coming out from him. And sure enough, Nafki Minayu Rav Idi Barabin Rav Chia Barabin, two great sages from the Gemara, Talmudic sages, which are very famous, their names are written all over. They were his children. So in the merit of him being careful with the candles. Another similar story, Rav Chizda used to hang around the house next to the doorway of the father of Rav Shizbi. He also saw that he was very careful with the candles of Shabbos, and he said, "You're going to have a great son," and his son Shizbi was born. Another story, the wife of Rav Yosef, she used to postpone lighting Shabbos candles as late as possible. Now, obviously, God forbid she would not light on Shabbos. Once it's sunset, you're not allowed to do anything. But she would wait till right before. You're also supposed to accept. We had the class on Tuesday. It's all about accepting Shabbos early. So she would also accept Shabbos a few minutes early, but so she would light them. And she did it on purpose like that. Why? Because she wanted it to be evident. Evident, that's what should be clear. It should be obvious that she's lighting for the sake of Shabbos. She's not lighting just to have light in her house. Those days, that was the lighting was for people to light candles to see. She wanted to be clear that she's lighting for Shabbos, so she should light late. Her husband, Rav Yosef, told her, we learned, when the Jews were traveling in the desert, so they always had a pillar of clouds by daytime and a pillar of fire by nighttime. And it says, they didn't one disappear and the other one comes. Like the cloud goes down and then the fire comes. They did it in a way that they merged with each other. So as the cloud was leaving, the fire was coming. And as the fire was leaving, the cloud was coming. So you had both. There was a time that you had both. What he said, what you learn from there is that you're not supposed to light Shabbos, wait till the weekday is over and then light Shabbos candles. You should light the Shabbos candles when it's still weekday. This way you are extending Shabbos and you're like merging the fire with weekday together. So she said, okay, maybe I'll do it very early. So then the next Friday, like a few hours before Shabbos, she's like lighting candles. So it says, Amar la hu Saba. A certain elder came to her, some commentators say it was Navi, Elijah the prophet, and he tells her, Tanina, we learned, not too early, not too late. So you got to do it in the right time. Amar Rava, and this will finish off, Derachim Rabbanan, someone that has mercy on rabbis, on sages, Avalei Bnin Rabbanan, you'll merit to have children than rabbis themselves.
What does that mean, mercy? Like he doesn't kill a
Take
rabbi
care.
after
No,
battling him?
no, mercy means you take care of them, give them when they
Don't make fun of them.
don't make fun of them, and to give them to take
Only
care
make
of them
fun of them a
food, give them
little,
food.
not too much.
Yeah. Next one, the Moiker Rabbanon, someone that's going to respect the rabbis. Havelu Chasnevasad Rabban. He'll have son-in-laws that will be rabbis. The Dacha Rabbanon, or someone that's scared from rabbis. Who goofy have it served Rabban? He himself will become a rabbi. Vilav Barhachi, if it's not possible to become a rabbi, Mishtaman Mile Kitzubim Rabbanon, his words will be accepted as the words of rabbis are accepted. I see some of the commentators Rachim have mercy on rabbis, they translate as loving rabbis, like respecting. Okay, so this is we see from here. This is where it comes from. You have all over the world the concept of supporting Torah scholars. You have koilels. You have all over the world. You have places that are called a koilel. People that sit and learn the whole day. They're not working, and you have businessmen that they give money to support these people. And you might say, "Oh, let them go work or whatever." That's negative. Look at it negatively. But if you learn the Gemara over here, there's actually it's a very special. Learning Torah is very holy, and we're not all able to learn Torah. and not all of us are able to. But that's really what we're supposed to be doing. So when a businessman supports the learning of Torah, he gets tremendous merit. We're gonna stop over here. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you everyone for having.
It's the best time now by the Shabbat thing. Oh, it still depends.
So that you're not supposed to light before. I think you're allowed to light from Plaga Mincha.
Okay.
There's a certain candle. It says Plaga Mincha. But every family tries to do a few minutes before candlelighting time. Candlelighting time is the deadline.
Yeah.
You should try to do a few minutes before. It's a special mitzvah to take Shabbos early.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Charlie, we missed you.